a sailboat in the moonlight and June. Wouldn't that be heaven? Oh, heaven just for two. A soft breeze on a June night and June. What a perfect setting for letting dreams come true.
I just got a call from the marina owner, and I guess our new tarp is flopping in the wind. We've got this huge windstorm right now with like 50-mile-an-hour winds, and it looks like our tarp is letting go. So I'm just here scratching my head about what I'm going to do exactly. It's so windy, I'm not sure I want to put a ladder up. I'll let you guys see what's going on. Just a second here. Can you see on the bow there, that's held together with Velcro, and it looks like it's not torn yet, but the Velcro's opened up and it's threatening the rest of the tarp, although it's holding on pretty darn good, but I'm not sure how long it can do it. Let me take the window down here and you can get some idea of the wind. That. It's pretty loud. My goodness. The rest seems to be holding up okay. Okay, well, let's see what we can do about it. Well, that's really all I can do. I'll just have to wait till the morning and hopefully things calm a little bit, but looks like it's going to hold together anyway. What a thing. The joys of boat ownership, folks. I'm going to go home and not worry about it. Good night. Well, it might be a little too windy for you to hear me, but I'll speak up. I finally got the boat all wrapped up, and if you look behind me here, you can see her in her glory. We did have a little scare last night with some wind, and I have made an adjustment here, recommended by my good wife, and put some sail tape on there actually on top to close up that Velcro. it looks pretty taut now. Everything's as tight as a drum. The cotton does stretch a little bit just as it gets wet, so it's gone through that process now, so I hope it stops stretching for the rest of the winter. A couple of things. There's the mast boot that we created, and also the zipper arrangement we've got for the stays. We got that on both sides, and the extension is here. We ran out of zippers, as you might be able to see there. Finally, there's the stern. All in all, a very successful project. I think I'm going to go home and make a hot chocolate right now because it's a little cool out here. But there she sits. Till next spring. Well, I'm walking through the winterizing procedure on our boat. Every boat's ever so slightly different, but there's basically three things that I focus on. First of all is the engine, because it's the most expensive. So wherever there is water, cooling water going into the engine, you need to flush that out. And there's several ways to do it. One is to find where the water is brought into the system. So in the case of my boat, I've got a strainer on one side, and it brings the cooling water up in, and it takes it through a heat exchanger, and that's pumped through back into the exhaust again and goes out the exhaust. So you know you've got water in the exhaust, you know you've got water in the pump that pumps the water, perhaps in the strainer, and you've also got water in the heat exchanger itself. All of those will be damaged if you leave your boat to freeze solid. So what I've done is I take a shop vac and I shop vac out the strainer first of all, and of course gravity's going to take water out of the through hull that brought water into the strainer. Then I'll follow it up to the exhaust, and generally speaking, if you've got a heat exchanger, you've got water coming out of the system and water going into the exhaust through a loop, a little vented loop. So I'll take the hose off of one side that feeds the exhaust, and I'll fill that hose right full of antifreeze. I use an RV antifreeze, and it'll fill the muffler box right full of that. It'll displace water, and it'll keep things from freezing. Now this is a vented loop, so basically this side has water going down into the exhaust. This side has water coming up out of the heat exchanger. Now both of these have access to areas that you want to keep from freezing. So I take this off, I put a funnel on top, and I fill the exhaust completely full of antifreeze. Then I go to this side and I fill this hose completely full till it gets to my heat exchanger. Then I put my mouth on it and blow it, actually, and it'll blow it right. I take the cover off of the impeller and I blow remaining water and that antifreeze right through the engine and right out the impeller. I leave the impeller open for the winter months. So this is my engine. As she sits now, she's all put to bed for the winter, and everything's ready to go. So that's our toilets, that's our engine. Now we got to look at the water system. Right now you can hear the sound of water running. That's my sink right here. I'm pumping the last remnant of water out of my tanks, and then we will winterize the water pressure system. Now we want to have a look at the water system in your boat. Now ours has a pressurized water system that has both hot and cold water. So there's two sides to this system. There's an output side that would include the hot water tank, and there's an input side that would include all the lines that bring water from the tanks to the pump. So I do them one side at a time. I start with draining all the tanks. So I do that by just running the pump and turning on each tank and until there's no water coming out of the tap any longer. Then, there's my bilge pump. Then I remove all the output hoses at each tank and I allow them to drain completely. There'll be just a little bit of water left in each tank, and that water will go into the bilge. The next thing I do is I go back to the pump. I remove the input line off the pump and give it a good blow. And generally you can remove the last remaining bits of water that are in that input side coming from each tank. So now your tanks are empty, the lines coming from your tanks are empty. Now we're going to look at the other side. In the output side is a hot water tank, and before you start adding antifreeze to anything, you want to make sure that your hot water tank is empty. You do that by opening the little valve at the bottom and just draining it into the bilge. Once it's drained, then you're able to shut it off so that you don't have a leak in the system, so to speak. Then I would go to the pump and I remove the input hose that comes from the tanks from my pump and replace it with a length of hose that will reach a bucket of antifreeze. When I then turn the pump on, I can go from one tap to another, just turn the taps on and run them, and when red comes out, then I know that that entire circuit has been winterized. Finally, you want to open up the hot water side and do the same thing on each tap, and there will be a residual amount of antifreeze in your hot water tank that will keep it from freezing. Finally, of course, when you're draining all these things, there's water going into your bilge, so you want to make sure your bilge pump is not sitting in, frozen water that's going to crack it. So what I'm able to do with my bilge pump is lift it out of the water, but I'll use it until the very end, put a little bit of antifreeze in the bilge itself, because there's always a little bit of water left there, and then I'll lift the pump out for the winter so it's staying up high and dry and not sitting in water. So that's about it. You can hear the tap running perhaps. I'm starting to get some air, so we're just running out of water in my system. There was 100 gallons, I think, left on board. So all that's been pumped out, and let's get winterizing. That's the hot water tank. We'll let it drain. It appears to be draining, or it appears to have drained. Well, close it back up again so I can create a loop. It's hot work. Alright. Turn the water pressure back on again. Pump should start pumping. I'll start with this tap right here. You can see the water coming out. Getting pinker and pinker and pinker. Eventually it'll push all the water out, and all that will remain will be antifreeze. So that's our toilets, that's our engine, that's our
Talk to me.